Tickets. Tickets, please. Tickets. I'm the tickets guy on the podcast. Hey, guys, it's Dan. Welcome to Fun, a podcast where we take fun seriously, and I'm currently cosplaying as a ticket man. Mentally, I'm not dressed as a ticket taker man, a conductor, a train guy, a train person. I'll listen.
You're more dressed like a man who puts graffiti on the side of a train.
Oh yeah, there you go. That's how I participate in the train. Listen, Nathan had a really great idea about the Disney Dan channel. He's like, hey, you're making these big, epic, evergreen pieces of content that are the costume evolutions, and I'm sure there's stuff you want to talk about. That, you about the episode, about what you learned, about your thoughts, yada, yada, yada. And then Nathan is, of course, also a great little interviewer. And so he has some great little thoughts to throw his way at me about.
5'5". I get you. Yeah, little.
Cat invasion.
Cat for those in audio form, we have a cat. We have a cat in studio.
Let's be real. Nathan and I see the numbers. Most of you are watching. You're not listening. Yeah. That's Frankie true. The cat. So Nathan, tell me what inspired you to have this thought of doing episode recaps?
Yeah, because I think that, I'll have to give it to Patrick Willems and his channel. He has a separate channel, and he does these not that you don't do elaborate episodes, but he's doing these sometimes 50-minute, hour and a half long, like introspective concepts on, stuff. And there's just a lot to sort of digest. And so he'll sort of take some questions and go through that process on a different sort of side thing. And I always kind of like that, because if you want to know more, there isn't really a place to do it inside of a video, but it's nice to sort of go, okay, well, why this for you, and why do that, and was it easy or hard to film it? And so getting into the production elements, but also talking about our favorite choo-choo, right? Like, we got to talk about that Thomas boy, and we can kind of go off on our elder millennial love of Shining Time Station here, and there's just stuff to talk about. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned in the episode that one of the reasons that you want to do it is you've had a lot of requests for a Thomas episode. Is that one of your main reasons?
Oh my gosh. Yes, absolutely. Well, yeah, I was like, when people initially, when I was making costume evolutions, people leave comments all the time. They're like, hey, I want this.
Right.
And for a while, the big ones were like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Bugs Bunny, Thomas the Tank Engine. Right now, Godzilla was really popular there for -1. A lot of people were asking for Godzilla. So like, people ask for a lot of these random costume characters,
right,
or just childhood characters that aren't what you would define as necessarily Disney. But Frankie, my gosh. He wants to be a star.
What a sweetheart.
These are not necessarily Disney characters, but people are like, but you're not, who cares about Disney? You talk about costume characters, Dan. So like, we want to know about the costume history of these things. And I've always was like, oh, so they want me to like talk about like, oh, Thomas had like maybe a live show or two, and they want me to talk about like the TV. But when I started looking into the whole Thomas situation, I was like, oh my gosh, this is wild. There have been a lot of Thomases that have appeared around the world, and people don't understand, and I try to make it clear in my videos that like I do a lot of condensing, because there are much like Disney, once they design an attraction, they just like to build it multiple times in multiple places. And so there are lots of repeat Thomases. Like, a company got good at building a Thomas shell and then built Thomas shells for like 150 trait. Like,
it's a mold.
Right.
It's
and
easy.
So I didn't go deep. I tried not to go like deep down those rabbit holes unless there's an interesting story that like is to be told. So I did like skip over a good chunk of Thomas events and Thomas, like locations, because every train station that wants to make any money has a Thomas event that happens there in some capacity.
That and Polar Express are like the two things you have to have.
Absolutely. And Hogwarts now. It's 3.
Oh,
there's
of course.
There's a triple. There's there's a triple attack now for
triple train
stations to make their money. And Chris Evans tried with Snowpiercer to get like a whole Snowpiercer train, like a fourth thing off the ground. But
we do love a train that represents all the ideals of
humanity,
late stage capitalism.
Yeah. So people just have. Thomas is everywhere is all I was trying to say. He's like literally everywhere at all these train stations. So people are like, oh, I've seen Thomas. Dan, you talk about Thomas. And it was a hugely requested topic for me to talk about. Like just everyone wants to talk about Thomas. And I understand why. And, as a college professor, I tried to touch on it in just a sentence in the video, but I said in the video, and I stand by the fact that like trains are like the big like industrial thing that like we made early on as humans that really connected us all in a huge way, and more so than boats and planes. Like all of that aside, trains were like the thing.
Trains connected us to our neighbors, whereas boats and planes maybe more so eventually connected us to our neighbors, but that took a little longer. And boats were all international travel.
Right.
Truly.
But even so, there were train tracks that ran across the entire continent of like Asia and Europe. You know what I mean? Like, and so it is like this crazy
Transcontinental Railroad.
There you go. You've heard that before.
Oh, baby. I learned about it on a Muppet Babies episode. That's how I know about the Transcontinental Railroad. Statler and Waldorf showed up and helped the babies create a train track with a train, and they did the whole Transcontinental Railroad. So don't say it. I love it. I
love trains.
My uncle
so they're very relatable. They're like wildly relatable, and they're insanely accessible for children. They're just everywhere, like tractors and like big yellow trucks. And so trains have it's just a home run. It's just a home run in terms of everyone's kind of interested in it at some point in their lives.
Why do you think kids like big trucks and trains? I knew a kid back in the day, and this would have been 10 years ago now, but he used to call construction equipment scoopies. That was his name for scoopies. And it's true. It's like those things scoop, trains like load. Like there's these very specific verb things that are like very basic and simple. And I think they get it. Maybe that's why it's like this thing has a purpose.
Yes, exactly. That's the thing. I think that's the thing. Is that this thing is purposeful. This thing is used by adults. I am a child. I want to be an adult as fast as humanly possible. Here are some things that I see that I like, that I relate to, that, and also just the wonder of them. Like they're these huge things, and how do they work, and what makes them work, and how can I make them work? Like it's a lot of mystery that like the refrigerator doesn't offer them. You know what I mean? It's just like,
or technology, really. Like computers are cool and stuff, but like a train isn't a computer. I know that sounds really simple, but like a train is an elaborate like fully mechanized many parts thing, especially an era where everything is pretty much a chip on a board, and it doesn't feel as there's not a lot of kinetic energy. Trains are like kinetic energy times 1,000. There's smoke coming out of one end, and there's chuggas, and like things can come on out. They're crazy.
And also the ground rumbles when they come by. You know what I mean? It's not like they're giants. They're the giants of the new world.
Did you ever put a penny on a railroad track when it was going by?
No, man. I didn't want to derail the track. I didn't want to have the train flip, do a dab, and kill thousands of people.
If that's all it takes, we're in trouble.
Well, as a kid, that's all I thought it took. All right.
Yeah.
Because while cartoons taught you about the Transcontinental Railroad, cartoons taught me that I could kill hundreds of thousands of people and ruin economies by just putting coins on a railroad track.
Yeah. Wallace and Gromit also taught me that you can lay track as you're going very quickly. If you remember the classic Wallace and Gromit.
There is a machine that does that. There's a machine that does that, but not at nearly the pace. Not nearly at the pace.
No, not nearly at the pace. Let me ask you about your train experience personally. Like, were you a train boy growing up?
No, I wasn't a train kid in that I grew up on a river, and so we were a river town. We were just a river town. I don't know what you want me to say it.
I know what you mean, but it just sounds very funny. As if you're Huck Finn.
Yeah,
like,
river. I grew up on a river. Yep, in a boat. No, I really enjoyed Shining Time Station a lot, but what's interesting is not for any of the Thomas segments, but almost all entirely for the train station and the jukebox station segments and George Carlin
stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The funhouse, the clubhouse stuff, 100%. Yeah. And so, I really had like a fondness for George Carlin super early on, and I really loved Shining Time Station. I loved it a lot. That's where I was big on it. But the Thomas stories were boring to me in a lot of ways because it was just it felt like to me like videos of toys. And toys that I didn't have, so like I wasn't doing this.
It was videos of toys.
Well, yeah, that's what nothing. Yeah. I was too busy watching Reboot and stuff. Man, like I wanted some action. I wanted at least some lip sync. Not those trains, man. We were lucky if their eyes moved.
Yeah, Well, they'd always do that. Like the best you could get, and you do it a couple times in the episodes. That circly bit their eyes do when they're dizzy.
Yeah, the swirling circly.
This is, of course, if you're watching the traditional Thomas vibe, giving off Epcot German Pavilion a little bit, and
very
I
much
love that.
so.
You know what? I've decided that I don't have the space nor the money, but boy, I think I could really get into some model trains. Like every time I see a model trains like thing, I'm like, "Whoo, boy, this is cool!" And I don't know what you do with it.
It is neat. It is neat. I have a couple buddies who build like small scale models, like model train size models, and it is cool. Don't get me wrong, but like then you just have half a basement that's a train station.
Truly.
And it's a real space eater. So you gotta have the room for it, and you have to have a partner who has the patience for it.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the idea of putting a hole in the top of each wall and just having a track. Very much, I'm going to keep referencing theme park stuff, but very Dino Land gift shop. I also grew up. There was a 1950s-esque diner where I grew up, and they had one of those too. Which just kind of did the whole thing. I'm like, you know what? I kind of like that. It's you can put a plate on it and take it to the kitchen.
It's interesting. Yeah. It's like the hamster. It's like the hamster tubes, but you don't have to feed this train. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And clean up after it. You just have to plug it in and let it go. So it is interesting. I'm also a big fan of cut holes in your walls and let your trains move. If you grew up in the Northeast, we had Wegmans up here, and every Wegmans has a ceiling hanging train, usually in the candy section, until they renovate the building. But they leave the train wherever it is as they continue to move the footprint of the building around. And so eventually, there's a train running over half of like the dairy section. Yeah. And you're like, why is there a train above the cheese? It's like, oh well, there used to be candy here. There used to be candy here.
Cheese train. I'm trying to think if I was a train boy. I was lucky enough that my grandparents took me to a couple like train things, as grandparents tend to do. I wouldn't say I loved Shining Time Station as well. I don't think I had. We'll talk a little bit about the Fisher-Price toys and stuff, but I didn't have any of those.
I had no Thomas toys growing up. I had no Thomas toys. No,
I had a couple things. I do know I had a couple like non-track related Thomas toys, like little like they used to make sort of Hot Wheels-esque size things. Yep. I think that was.
I wasn't a train kid. I really wasn't. And I wasn't a car kid or a truck kid. I loved Sesame Street and cartoons and TV. Like I was just super into media and not heavy equipment. But there are some kids out there, man, who love heavy equipment. I just wasn't one of them.
They still do. You know what? Why don't we talk about those toys real quick, since we're sort of on that subject matter. So I know growing up, my mall had a toy shop, and that toy shop very much had that classic. And
we're talking like a non branded toy shop, like
non-branded, not a what was it? Not a KB Toys. This was just its own thing, and they had a big old play area where you could play with Thomas Fisher-Price wooden
Yeah, these bear pine tracks
Yeah.
were super huge, as well as the magnetic cup-links of all of the trains that you could click together. And I guess this is kind of where I did get my Thomas fix, is that when we went to a toy store or something, I would click into one of these and play around with it for a little bit. But I this wasn't the ecosystem I had at home. I didn't get hard into this. I had a couple friends whose like brother was super into Thomas or whatnot, but it feels now that I have 2 kids, like that feels like a heavy investment that doesn't have like a long-term payoff like Lego might say. You know what I mean? Like kids have fun clicking Lego together until they're dead. You know what I mean? Like that's a terrible thing to say. As humans love clicking Lego together. That's why the box says from like 1 to 99. You know what I mean? Lego are super accessible. Thomas the Tank Engine bear pine tracks with like a 4-foot wooden table that has all the, you know what I mean? Like you see it at Toys R Us or something.
Yeah.
Like that's like the cost the same as a pool table, but you know, for your 3-year-old. But for your 3-year-old.
Well, that was
like,
the problem, right? My parents, we were a good middle class family, but we didn't have Thomas like bear pint, like we didn't have that kind of money, you know. Like this stuff is
upper middle class at the very least.
At the very least,
yeah.
You know, there's like some story probably of a train conductor who's like, my family was poor and I got 1 piece of track for every Christmas, and you know, finally when I was 12, I could do a loop.
I think the track's actually the most affordable part of the hobby, if I understand correctly.
For sure. And it's so funny because I did a little bit of research into this kind of stuff. There are variants of these toys. There are special editions. All of that
they
stuff.
went deep. They're still making them. They're still making
100%. Because it's still successful. It's still like a huge thing. What's interesting for me is I didn't get into the Fisher-Price ones, but then I went to Japan. And
Thomas is huge in Japan. Unlike you can't even imagine. It's nothing like America because they actually use trains in Japan. Like it's wild.
Kids know
Who would have
about
thought? Kids are like, a train? Yeah, I love trains.
I go on one every day. Like this is an example here of the Tamikatami line. So this is their play rail system. And this was what you would go to a toy store, and legitimately one aisle was specifically for trains, and the majority of these play rails were Thomas. And you can see kind of this all connected up here. And it's fun. It's kind of like it is a much more flexible system than the wood track, so you can move it around. And then I have.
Right, but it's very American to deforest the world in order to make toys.
So, sure. Well, it's already made. I didn't make it. Yeah. So no, this is just plastics. We're just ruining the environment a different way. But what's cool? So this is the track from here. I'll lower the screen so people can see a little bit better. This is the commuter train that we took when we were in Tokyo every day, and they have trains for each metro stop and each line, and Thomas just fits right into that system. And they're battery powered, so you can open it up, and I don't remember which one is it. You gotta use a screwdriver. You just put a little battery in it, little AA, I believe,
and off it goes.
It goes. And I think that's the thing about the Fisher-Price stuff is like. What I like about trains is they do their own thing. Like I don't need to move them around with my hand, right? And so it's cool to watch it kind of go. And what's neat too is like these play rail systems have become very popular even in America, and you can buy them here. And there's other systems that people have created through 3D printing adapters.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine what 3D printing has done to the Thomas community. I mean, that's huge,
crazy. And so. I'm kind of, you know, I might have to get a little bit more. Next time I go to Japan, I think I'm going to come back with a couple more choo-choos. Your episode did make me...
Becoming a train boy.
Slowly, mildly. Your episode did make me want to... I kind of felt bad I didn't buy a Thomas when I was there. I was like, why didn't I buy a Thomas? I think that was a strange move. Let's talk Shining. Let's talk Shining time.
Okay.
Was
Shining
it like
Time Station.
Right. We should
a PBS show.
Yeah, we should make it clear for people that might not know, because I'm sure there are people in your audience that are not old as hell and have no idea what we're talking about. There was a time on American television in public television where Thomas didn't have his own show. I don't know how did they just show Thomas by himself in Britain? Like, was that just what they did?
No, there was a conductor. Ringo Starr was the original conductor out there. It was just Thomas and Friends. It was a repackage by an American branding agency who just snatched it up and brought it here and, added a little bit of, added more to it. And the jukebox band is a big part of what was added, to like, jukebox band's very American, very American.
For those who don't know, it was a jukebox. Okay, let's set up the station real quick. The station.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
The station is this gorgeous kind of set for those who haven't seen it, and there is like a window desk area to get help, and then on the right is sort of like some seating and an entertainment section, and that entertainment section had it was an old. Not Victrola is not the term I'm looking for. Kind of like a crank video viewer.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Which was a lie because they would always.
They used to have those. Used to have those at Main Street and Disney.
Yes, that same thing. But these, of course, showed old public domain cartoon clips to music. And everything.
Yes.
And then the jukebox was you could put a dime in the jukebox, and then they would take you inside the jukebox, and there was a literal puppet band.
Right, and you would watch the dime descend, which was a big part of the core memory of mine.
Oh yeah,
you would see the dime descend into the puppet world, and then it became very Pee Wee Herman-esque. And inside the jukebox was because of course inside the machine's a band that plays all the requests. Right, that's like how it works.
Yeah,
and they all had their own personalities, and there was all kinds of drama and relationship dynamics between the jukebox puppet band. I love that show, man. And you can just go on YouTube now and watch like 30-40 minute just compilations of nothing but the jukebox band play, and it's pure dopamine for me. I love it so much. And it's very Country Bears. We talked about this on the Country Bear episode, but so Country Bears in that campy sort of self-aware yet at the same time, like very like serious music, like serious, well done music by a nice team. It wasn't just like some last minute thought. It was very, very cool.
Yeah, and then the station was run by Stacey Jones, played by Grease's own Dee Dee Khan.
Yeah.
And then just children. Like, I don't know how to explain that part. Like, I think maybe they were related.
It was an operating train station. Oh yeah. Well, I think they were just local kids that were just like. But that's fine. I hung out at a gas station a lot as a kid because why not? It's just what you do. Thank God the people I was hanging out with weren't bad.
Yeah.
Thank God that chick from Grease kept it together with those kids.
Yeah, right. And I don't know. I mean, and every plot sort of revolved around something she was dealing with when the kids were helping her, and then of course there was the tiny conductor.
The conductor, yeah.
First played by Ringo Starr.
Yeah.
And then by George Carlin.
Then later by Alec Baldwin in the film.
Yes.
And I see in the notes here you say, why is he so tiny?
Why is he so damn tiny, Dan?
Well, I think that is the bridge between like the segments in the interstitial segments in the station and the model trains. It's like, oh, here's a little man who is like a magical little man who's going to take us to and then narrate the stories of the little land, Right. And so,
to be clear, not a little man as an actual little person.
No,
Ringo Starr isn't playing a little person. He's playing
a green screened man.
Yes.
That is like 4 inches tall, like Tom Thumb or Thumbelina or something like that.
There
but
you go.
magical, like Tom Bombadil.
But can't be seen. Well, can be seen, but always hides from Harry Cupper, who is like the engineer janitor of Shining Time Station, who's always like, I don't know about this.
Listen, I understand why. I understand why he hides from him, because Henry Cupper is an aging man. He's an aging engineer. And the conductor is a magical man who can likely see through you like Superman. He's got X-ray vision.
Yeah.
He knows that Henry's on his last leg, all right? And the last thing that Henry Cupper needs is to be startled by a small man with a whistle around the corner. He turns around the corner. Oh, you know what I mean? Like, right. And down went Henry Cupper. So
Stacy, I have something to tell you. I killed him. He saw me. He's standing there. Killed him. This is my best Ringo Starr. I don't know.
It's a good one. It's good. I get it. So yeah, he's hiding. Whistle. He's always hiding, but the kids can see him because kids believe.
Kids can see everything.
Yeah, kids believe in magic.
Kids believe in magic. And
But wait, you also have to talk about Schemer.
Oh my God. I loved Schemer, my dude. Like Schemer was this man who ran the coin operated attractions there.
His name, that's what you call an entrepreneur.
Yes, he's an entrepreneur. And he had a large piece of his hair put into a curl. So Schemer always had this curl, and what was for me, Schemer was the curl and was that kind of coin operated belt thing that you could shoot coins out or add coins to.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, I wanted one of those things. Those things looked so cool.
Sure,
to get money out of it.
As long as it came fully loaded with quarters, of course, I wanted it too. You know what I mean? Don't give me an empty one.
No, and Schemer had a desire to take over the station a little bit. And so he was always conniving.
As a true entrepreneur, this guy was just trying to move up. He's the Elon Musk of Shining Time Station. Do you understand?
The Elon Musk of Shining Time Station. That's so true. So true.
Just trying to buy his way in.
I have a vague memory that he had like a nephew or something named Schemet, but I can't. I didn't Google it, but I
think that's just your sleep paralysis demon, Schemet.
Schemet.
Oh no, I see Schemet again. I can't move.
The tiny schemer running after me. God.
It's always following me with its little belt full of change.
Yeah, my favorite. So I watched an episode. By the way, you can. This show is not trying to like not have its stuff in like everywhere at all. It's all on YouTube. If you want to watch Shining Time Station. Yeah. Holy moly!
It's in some pretty low quality. Let's just say that, like
some of it, yeah. But I watched one that was like real good. I was shocked by the quality. First of all, the theme song is a bop. It's not the traditional Thomas theme, which is a different theme.
No.
It's just like this.
All
90s...
the music from the show is a bop, by the way.
Yeah,
all of the music direction of Shining Time Station was peak.
Yeah,
peak.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about when it came to this Shining Time Station concept was just now and then they would go to the anything tunnel, which was just a way for them to show clips of stuff that they didn't know how to add anywhere. There's because Ringo was just like, let's take a gander at the anything tunnel, and you're just like, and then it just kind of zooms in on this tunnel on the wall, and then it's like stuff.
That's just what children's
man.
Television is, man. Yeah, Teletubbies. That's before Teletubbies. They got it together. They just put it right on their bellies.
Yeah,
you could just see anything tunnel was just their belly buttons.
Teletubbies was like, and they're like, what makes you so successful? Well, you see, we show it twice. That's what makes us successful, man.
Yes.
They're like, let's do it again.
Let's do it again.
I do have a very very good spot in my heart for Shining Time Station. And I have to ask you, though, about Sodor, which I never called it Sodor growing up. I didn't really know about the Isle of Sodor. I just knew
the Isle of Sodor, yeah.
Which is where Thomas
This place is like Middle Earth, dude. This is like Middle Earth.
It sounds like it.
The Reverend who wrote Thomas, Reverend Audrey, Reverend Audrey, I think. You
made the episode, not me, man. You tell me.
True. He like took the time, and then his son later like really went hard on it, but took the time to fully like design an entire map of the Isle of Sodor and kind of have all of the train tracks and like show you where everything is, and it ultimately really made sense to structure things that way because kids, you know, I mean, like you start to understand, right? You start like we as adults, we understand Game of Thrones. You know, it's all about a map and Game of Thrones, for crying out loud. So you know, I think it was really wise as terms of like making a world, really truly doing real world building by having a map with locations, towns, landmarks. It really brought that show together, man. The Isle of Sodor is something else.
Sodor, according to Wikipedia, Sodor lies in the Irish Sea between Cumbrera, I think it's Cumbrera, I don't know, and the Isle of Man. So it's just a new island.
Right next to the Isle of Man is the Isle of Train.
Yep. And it is wild how they just, and it's very close to England. Like you can, you're right, they made a map. The main line, theoretically, Thomas's main line can go to England. There's a stop in Barrow. Apparently.
Right, he makes his way there. The Queen has met Thomas several times.
Of course.
Just want to say the Queen and Thomas are best friends. You know, of course.
For sure.
I say it in the video. As a kid, no idea this was a British television show. No idea whatsoever this was a British TV show. We did such a good job of repackaging it, especially with George Carlin, who I have to say, I have heard many stories from people who have worked in like theaters and industry that like when George Carlin came to town to tour as a comedian, as a raunchy, dirty comedian, that like producers or people in the theater would like bring their kids in that were big Thomas fans, and he would like throw on the conductor instantly. He would go into conductor mode instantly and spend like 15-20 minutes with these kids telling them a Thomas story. You know what I mean? Like it truly incredible that like that's like the legacy he left behind. I'm sure that there are kids out there who like met George Carlin and he was like 100% the conductor, dialed in instantly. And I gotta really respect that, you know. Ringo apparently hated doing it. And you when you watch it, his performance
doesn't suggest it.
His performance is so stiff and like awful. It's rough. God bless you, Ringo. I know you're still with us.
There was a clip from the episode I was watching where now and then they will have him on the desk and then there'll be action happening. So you know in England somewhere they're like, Ringo, you just need to look right. And then, and we're gonna have you do a couple of motions. And so they were like going. There was some celebrate. Yay! A new train was coming. Yay! A new train's coming. And then Ringo's just kind of at the desk, and then he just sort of, kind of jumps a little bit and like waves his arms like he's excited and claps his hands for the new train. And you just knew it was like, well, that's the default celebration conductor footage we have. Like that's
all we have.
That's gonna be it. And it was like after lunch. Clearly, is just barely doing anything.
Ringo gets paid by the jump.
Yeah. I'm not doing
so we just filmed him jump once.
No more. I'm tired. Let's discuss a little bit. Well, let's talk a little bit about Sodor. Do you have a favorite Thomas character?
It's just Thomas. I mean, like Percy, James, Henry, Cranky Crane, that helicopter. I'm sure there's a submarine at some point. I don't know. Like they're all fine.
I like that bitch Gordon. He grumpy from what I remember, because
Gordon was the original star of the books.
Well, Gordon no wonder he's grumpy. He got Urkeled by Thomas.
And he's blue. He looks a lot like Thomas. You know, he's built. And he was like on the front cover of the original story. But it's interesting because the Reverend would carve trains out of broomsticks for his kids, and so he carved a little blue train and gave it to his sick son, who he's writing the stories for. And his son got the toy. It was like, this is my toy, Thomas. This is my train, Thomas. And he was like, Dad, can you please put Thomas in the stories? Can you put my Thomas in your stories? And so Gordon got bumped over, and a new blue train arrived with the face Thomas. And so I think that's kind of interesting.
Strange things are happening to me.
Yeah, truly. So I think it's interesting that like the wooden Thomas toys that we all play with are literally how we started. Like it's legitimately how it started, which I think is pretty neat.
I just remember an episode of Gordon, and I think it was because I also had a book probably of it. Like, because they would make episodes into books as well. You get picture books.
I truly believe it was the other way around, but
no. What I'm saying is like there was the OG stories.
Yeah. Much like the Wizard of Oz books, there are like 130 Thomas books. There are a lot of OG stories. It's not just like 6. There are like. In theory,
it could have been an original that then had been re-illustrated.
Right. I'm just giving you a hard time.
Of course you are. You just ride me like a train over here. All right, so.
But you had the little golden book, and you watched the show.
And I just remember Gordon getting bricked up, like the cast of Mar-a-Lago.
That is like the first story, man. That is like the number one.
That's why I remember it.
Yeah. And getting bricked up in a completely different way than the kids are saying these days. I just want to say, like Gordon was Gordon was literally placed into a tunnel and sealed because he didn't want to move, which I think is funny. Terrifying.
It's terrifying.
And if you saw in the episode, they literally, it kind of like came to life because there's a bunch of defunct Thomas trains sitting, rotting in old nuclear tunnels, like in England, where they filmed. Yeah, like the scene where they filmed like Chewbacca just walking past her husband's late
That's
wife.
Wild.
That whole scene, that whole area that like is filmed back behind Princess Leia cold shouldering her Wookiee BFF is like a rotting Thomas face. It's hilarious. It's like back in there. Yeah,
Seems appropriate.
Yeah, the Gordon getting bricked up is an iconic story. It's like the story, quite honestly.
Oh man, I tell you what, if they would have been like, we're stuck, they got us, the Empire, we're not going to get out. The Empire, I don't know what they're called. What are they called? First Order. Who cares?
The First Order.
Who cares? Star Wars is over. But anyway, it's like, oh no, First Order's here, and then all of a sudden it's like chugga 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 chugga, and they're like, oh, here's our way out. And it's just like bump 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 bump, and then just Thomas, just riding Thomas out.
No, it's that spooky like 6-legged Thomas that comes crawling out of the tunnel. You know that one with like the long face.
Well, that's okay. There's an excellent a series called Monster Factory done by the McElroy brothers, and one of the things that they do on that is, well, basically they create weird. They take the parameters that a video game will allow and make people look as terrible as possible. But then they'll also add modifications. And one of the modifications to Skyrim you can do is change all the dragons to Thomas the Tank Engine.
Very amazing.
But the roars get turned into choo-choo noises. So you'll be like doing a trek and you'll hear a choo-choo. And then this Thomas just comes out of the sky breathing fire. It's pretty great.
I love it. I truly love it. It's so, and because it's so industrial, like we were talking about earlier, like you don't see that people doing that with like Big Bird, you know what I mean? Or like with even Kermit, but like you do see it like with Thomas and like Furbies, like these mechanical beasts that like then get turned into these, like, we just hold like a weird fascination with anything like that. You know what I mean? In our heads.
I think you're right. Thomas has a weird like side history of meme culture. And
Huge meme culture. Huge. Yeah. But I mean, it's also like it's baby's first meme in a way, like super accessible memes, because everybody, like, you know, you can't get much more base than making memes out of Thomas. I understand 9 out of 10 Thomas memes. I have only really understood 2 out of 10 Democratic National Convention memes. So all I'm saying, so I'm
you're saying Thomas for president.
Yeah. Thomas for president, right? Yeah. The one with 6 legs and the long face. Yeah.
The one that
Curse Thomas.
One of my favorite, the one that where he's coming out like a worm from his,
like King Candy
cocoon.
At the end of Wreck-It Ralph.
What I would say though is I think it's because this is something I talk to my students about a little bit. One of the reasons we get unnerved in film is the concept of the uncanny. So robotics is something that we can use in film to kind of give ourselves goosebumps because it's close to right but not, and I think the fact that Thomas, it's just a train but it has a face, like it's not Cars-esque in the sense of like, you know, it's all kind of put together.
Yeah, the windshield are the eyes and the bumpers the mouth and the tailpipe's the anus. No, this is completely different. This is just a train with a face.
A train with a face. And for the majority of its existence, that train has either been in stop motion, I guess would be the way.
Very much. It very much embraced the idea of a model train set.
Yes,
like it was a model train story. You know, like. Truly, I mean, people get upset when you call them puppets, but that's what they are. Like, I hate to break it to you, any inanimate thing that you maneuver in a way to give life is a puppet. Ta-da! I've been a puppeteer for a while, but sorry, what you're saying?
What was? So
uncanny.
I think there's both that the stop motion element, and then also the fact that a lot of it was early CGI. It's
when it finally switched over.
It gets a little even more into that Uncanny Valley-esque with the CGI, and I think that just makes it very meme worthy. I think we like it, but it's
like
just,
Reboot, like the old CGI show Reboot. You know what I mean? Like it feels almost bizarrely low effort. It's like, oh, I feel like a really talented middle schooler could do this. You know, like one of those, like one kid who's really into like computers animation, but at the same time, it's also clearly a produced children's show, you know?
Yeah, and I think this is a later CGI variation of him that I'm showing on the screen. But the people they kept the model town train look of the people, and those people are freaky, man. Like they don't look right, and
they look like the people in Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Yeah, exactly. I was past Thomas for the whole CGI era. This wasn't my
Me too.
My bag.
I wasn't.
But boy, they got into like trains from different countries And
yes,
it's
yeah,
crazy.
Africa. There's an Africa train right now. There's a Japanese bullet train. There is a Chinese worker train. Like there are some really interesting and dynamic trains because much like in the sequel to Independence Day and every Star Wars movie, like it has to be an international market now for these cartoons. It's not just like, oh, just a bunch of white kids in America are watching this. No, everyone is watching this around the world now, and representation really matters in a lot of ways. And so like you've got everybody there. Yeah, you got the bullet train there. On the second one's the bullet train.
Yes.
Then the African train is the third one. You can kind of
Yes.
see like the design. It's neat. I think it's kind of cool. This is the newest Thomas. The
Right.
all engines go, and
Yes.
the Thomas community hates this
Really?
Thomas with a, oh my God, they hate this Thomas with a passion. I call it anime Thomas, and they're like, it's not anime, it's a cartoon. It's like, nah, that's anime. This is an anime Thomas.
It's Flash animation Thomas is what it gives me vibes of. Like,
Sure, yeah.
a little bit, but I actually think this is pretty great, and I think the reason I think this is great is because we have been living. If you're not going to do model trains, then why make it in CGI to represent model train? Like there's a handcrafted element to the original that I love.
Sure.
But if you're not going to do
absolutely.
that, you might as well kind of exaggerate things.
And these things translate to meet and greet characters way better than any of the other
yeah.
Thomases. And I show it's at the end of my video. I didn't have no good video of this was available, but I had a couple of good photos of these characters as costume characters, and they're cool. They look gorgeous compared to every other Thomas before.
I don't really understand people's whole bit. Something we were going to talk about later, but I think we'll just talk about it now because it's kind of leaning into it. You're going to start seeing this Thomas show up in the Mattel adventure parks that are coming to Kansas City, and then the first one's opening in Arizona, supposedly in 2024. I don't think it's going to happen, but not yet. But it's sort of like an indoor-outdoor variation of all Mattel products. And Thomas is like a big thing. Now, what I think is interesting about this is it is the newer variation of Thomas. They do this thing with Thomas that I've seen they do with a lot of characters now. The new Barney has this too, where the teeth have a little, not a chip mark, but just a little like uplift in the middle. It's this like, oh, there's a little cute gap variation on Thomas. But what I think is funny is if you watch your video, they are doing the same helicopter flat ride where the helicopters go up and down that they've been doing for 20 years in different parks here. It's the same
all I can
concept.
say is from all the research I've done so far is this park is doomed because it's open to Thomas section. And they're building a Thomas section. They are truly doomed. I don't know what else to say.
Tell me about that one park that looked legitimately cool and then went away.
Edaville, New York, I think. It was like that's the thing I was kind of talking about right at the beginning of the podcast is that they can roll a Thomas into almost any train location and do like a Thomas event. It's pretty easy as long as that location's connected to the outside world through the rails. It can bring in anything, right?
Yeah.
So like the Strasbourg Thomas that you saw, like as the first authentic steam engine Thomas that they built,
the one you went to,
the one that I went to, that Thomas goes to other parts of America during the off season of Strasbourg to have Day Out with Thomases everywhere, right? So there are train locations all around the world, museums and whatnot, because trains were everywhere, right? So this location had a big train attraction. It had a train museum, like train exhibits came through, and they're like, all right, what can we do since we're so train heavy here? And much like Strasbourg did with the Day Out to Thomas that I went to, they invested in a Percy, and they made one of the square-faced guys, and they have the fat controller there, and they have a bunch of Thomas stuff, like a Thomas pop-up tent. They like did a bunch of investment in it, but not nearly to the level of this place that did a $25 million investment to build like 7 Thomas attractions, including rebranding the train that goes around their entire park, a la Disneyland, into a Thomas train. And COVID, they opened right before COVID, and it took the park out. Like overnight. Like they could not reopen and continue to pay the licensing fees. It was insane.
It's so sad.
So they took down all the Thomas signage and painted everything. And now you can go ride Cranky Crane, but it's like orange now and it doesn't have the face anymore. Like all the rides are still there except for the Thomas. The Thomas itself, they're trying to sell. From what someone on the comments is like, by the way, they're trying to sell that Thomas that they had there because to make some money because they can't use it, which I thought was interesting.
That is interesting. Something that kind of came to my mind thinking about Thomas and theme parks and stuff was like these books started coming out and were the Reverend's first 26 books when he made them was from 45 to 72. And man, there's a bit of me that thinks there's an alternate universe where Walt picked up one of those books.
I think about it all the time.
And did something because
boy, but by the time he really
realm.
By the time Thomas really, I think about that all the time. And by the time Thomas really took off, and by the time we saw like a train station, like the Neen Valley Railroad, which is the first one that took an old steam engine and painted it and like made it look like a Thomas unofficially. Sure. That happened in the early 70s. So Walt was already gone by the time Thomas blew up. And if Walt had been in England and that's where he lived, I'm sure it would have been a very different story. And if Walt was still alive today, not that he would be. He would be ancient, but
he'd be like, kill me.
You've watched too much Alien Resurrection.
Jimmy Carter's like now youthful because Walt Disney's walking around.
Right. But Walt would have been hard into Thomas for sure. At the very least, he would have just been a fan and really appreciated what the brand did to bring awareness to trains. At the very least,
I can't believe, and I want some historian to tell me this is true. There's no way that someone like Walt or Harper Goff, there were several. Somebody had a Thomas book. They're all going to these train stores and doing hobbyist stuff. Like,
I'm sure.
Somebody.
But at the same time, think about how the amount of books, the amount of children's literature out there that
we're also train oriented,
right? Yeah. So it could have just flown right over his head. I think about it all the time. I Googled it once or twice, like Walt, Disney, Thomas the Tank. It's just a bunch of fanfics and,
fanfics,
ridiculous art,
like sexy, like.
No, well, let me tell you something. There's a lot of fake Wikipedias out there that people like fanfic write like alternate universes of like what would have happened.
I've run across those before.
What would have happened if Planet Hollywood took off or something? I don't know. So it's the most. It's like what good and like. By the way, ChatGPT is reading those Wikipedias the same amount they're reading the ones that are actually peer reviewed. So
I remember coming across like, I don't know if it was like Frasier or Cheers. It was Frasier. And I was like looking up, I was like, what episode was this? And I was like looking up and it's like season 25. I was like, season 25? I think it was when the reboot was happening. And it was like someone had like put together 12 seasons of like new Frasier episodes and just wrote like Wikipedia articles on this like fan site thing.
Hey man, we've got a podcast about theme parks and we put a lot of hours into that. So, hey.
Yeah, but it's like actual legitimate content,
Yeah. God bless that guy. I hope he's doing well.
Yeah, man.
Him and his Frasier hyperfixation. God bless him.
I want to be very clear in case he's violent. I have no issues with what he's up to. Not a problem.
But if he's not violent, get help, buddy.
Get help, buddy, please. All right, some thoughts about the show. I want to know, you say in the episode, coin-operated Thomases are better than Harry Potter Land. Yes. Defend yourself.
Yeah. I will defend myself. And to say that they're...
You weren't expecting that now you say dumb stuff and now you have to defend yourself because you have a podcast about
That's where you're wrong, sir. None of the stuff I say is dumb. It's all heartfelt
it's all
and
very
authentic.
Serious. Yeah.
I think honestly, for 75 cents at a mall for a 2-year-old who's super hard into Thomas, he will get more a 2 to 5 year old who's super into Thomas at a coin operated Thomas ride will get more out of that 90 seconds of loud music and gears grinding than you will ultimately take away from the Harry Potter experience. Because while it's all great and stuff, you also leave broke. You know what I mean? You leave with a lot of blood sugar issues because of the amount of butterbeer you drank. It's just not.
You know, like you're speaking from experience more than.
Just to say that, I think that for your money's worth, for 75 cents, you truly, as a 5-year-old, are living. You are truly living. Not a care in the world. Your best friend Thomas is chugging you around. You know what I mean? You just had an applesauce. Later, you're taking a nap. And compared to now, your miserable, sad millennial life, husking, hauling your bloated husk of a body into the Florida heat to sweat so you could pay $7 for a bottle of Gilly water just to replenish a little bit. You know what I mean? Or waiting a 15-minute long line for a Coke freestyle machine.
Just all so you can feel something.
Just so you can feel something. Cut to the mall, that 5-year-old kid, he's just rocking back and forth, just full of glee. Just full of that kid's getting his dopamine.
You just need to, and I know this is true, but because we'll talk about it in a second. Let's get a little off topic, but it's good. You're not kidding, because there is a write a little coin operated thing at a Kmart and get a slice of Little Caesars that is so deep ingrained in my brain.
What was the ride?
I think it was just a car or a helicopter. I think they switched it out.
Sure.
It was certainly not. I mean, we weren't fancy, in Indiana. No. We had traditional non-IP American cars.
Yeah. Central PA. I had you had the spaceship, the roller coaster car, the ambulance. There's every once in a while you'll find an ambulance, which is the weirdest coin operated ride.
Theoretically,
hey, Grandma gets in these a lot. I'd like to hop on one, see what it's about. They never let me get in
EMS. Theoretically, you're the EMS.
Oh yeah. Sure.
You're driving.
Yeah, you're riding up front. You're right. You're right.
Do you think little Elon rode one of those and he was like, "What if I could have this in real life?"
I'll lower. I agree with you, but I'll lower the thought. He rode one. And he's like, "What if I could ride this without it plugged in?"
Yeah.
And that was the moment.
Daddy, give me another piece of dirty diamond. I need to write this.
Give me an emerald encrusted slice of pizza,
please. No, you bring this up. What's funny is I don't know if you've seen someone who's recreated an entire Kmart from the 90s in VR that you can just walk through with a Little Caesars in it. And man, we are dying for feeling something nostalgic. We are.
Yeah, truly.
Woo!
50 years ago they made Grease 2, so that's this is the equivalent of that, or Grease 3. This is just us looking for anything that'll remind us of our past. But of all things, at Kmart,
I mean, some of us, man, that was as good as it got. We used to go to Walmart because on a fancy day.
I'm trying to think if it was Kmart for me. I guess Kmart was big for a minute, but we're always near mall.
Yeah, man, blue light specials. Come on now.
Yeah, and Joe Boxer was at Kmart. I remember
Joe Boxer. I hadn't thought about Joe Boxer in a while.
Yeah, those smiley. Because when I was a middle schooler, I was big on smiley faces. You know what I mean? Smiley faces. I was like, that's it. You know that poster? They had a poster at Spencer's that had 100 different smiley faces. They were all different emotions. Someone's listening to this podcast now. And they're like, I had that poster.
Yeah, totally. Oh, we need to have a whole episode about department stores for sure. Because department stores are I feel like they're gone. I feel like we're the last generation that remembers Pomida or these weird.
They're still there. They're just a Planet Fitness now. And if you go in there, much like Journey into Imagination, if you look at the floor and you observe the construction of, you're like, oh yeah, look, if you look right here, used to be where all the checkouts were. Or if you look over here, is where the big turntable was. Oh, wow. It's the same thing, guys.
Look at that. Let me ask you about your clown issues. You brought up.
Okay.
You brought up in the episode that
This
you
is
have
great.
clown issues.
Oh, deep. I have bad clown issues, bro. Yeah. I'll tell you where it came from too. I'll tell you, I know exactly what it is. I know it all.
Go. I'm very excited.
I want to say I was 3 years old. I was watching TV, what had to have been either like TNT, TBS, one of those like not
one of those Turner networks.
Yeah, one of those networks that's like syndication shows, a movie, that kind of thing. So something was on, who knows, Xena, Warrior, I don't know what was on, you know what I mean?
Sure.
And my parents were around and about. We had a kind of like a bigger house in rural Pennsylvania, and
Fancy.
they no, it was like very very low income area that you could get like a very big house for pennies. And so who knows where they were? Probably banging or something. I don't know. I was left alone for far too long. You know what I mean? And the show.
Think about your
it
parents
went from
banging.
You don't know him, and my dad's dead. It's fine. So,
R.I.P. Bless up.
So the syndicated show ended, and coming up next, and so I sat there and watched a significant portion of
Not good.
Tim Curry, who I love deeply as a child, like amazing, like Muppets Treasure Island, Clue. What's
Home
not to
Alone
love
2?
about
Jeez.
Home Alone 2?
Pizza.
Right, you know, right, exactly. Also, Superhero Cyber Squad is what I was thinking of last time. I was not VR Troopers, Superhero Cyber Squad from a previous episode, or maybe one you haven't heard yet. I'm not sure. At some point, you've heard me talk about VR Troopers. What I meant was the Superhero Cyber Squad. And the main villain of that show was voiced by Tim Curry. And so, sorry, I had to go all the way around there just to get to that. And Spamalot on Broadway. Tim Curry, I love him. But I watched, and it had to be It Part 2, because I specifically remember the creature, and I remember like his face, like his clown face coming off, or like peeling away. Like
So like it wasn't even the kid-oriented clown
slayings.
bro.
No, bro. I just got the horror part of it. And
do you have
I was
spider
just like,
problems as well, or just clowns?
No, I mean, like, I'm not big into, I'm not like an entomologist or whatever, you know, a bug guy is, but like, I'm fine, you know, I'll see a bug and I'll walk by, you know, I won't freak out.
You're a pacifist, just walk by.
I'm a bug pacifist is what I'm trying to say. Yeah. No, it was less about that and more about the clowns of it all, because my mom's mom was very much into clowns. Like, she dressed up like a clown every year for Halloween, and like she would
Did you have porcelain clowns? That was a thing for a while.
It was a thing for a while. We weren't wealthy enough to have porcelain clowns, but instead what I got was like what must have been like dollar store or like Woolrich, like clown art for my bedroom. And so there was a bunch of as every birthday and like holiday, I was given clown things to decorate my room, including I remember I had this huge clown lamp that was like a clown holding like a big like bushel of balloons, like Disney World style, all the balloons were plastic, like multicolored balloons, and there was a light inside of it. So like the light shade was like a bunch of balloons. I'm sure someone out there also had this clown lamp. This was like, and like every morning I had to wake up to clown lamp, and clowns on my walls, and I was terrified. I remember like parades going by as a kid, like in my hometown, hiding under like my parents' like folding chair when the clowns would like come through, because I was just like, this clown's gonna take me to his lair, peel his face off, and try to eat me. You know what I mean? There's not much differentiating. And so as a grown adult man, I went and saw the It reboot, and I did it. And I did it. The first watching it was easily one of the most difficult things I had to do as an adult. It was really like facing like some trauma, but I got on the other side of it.
Schindler's List. Of movies.
What?
Well, it's a tough movie. It's difficult. It's a difficult watch.
What? Yeah, like Boy in the Striped Pajamas difficult? Yeah, I guess. But like I'm coming from a different
Trauma film.
Yeah. Schindler's List. Good Lord.
Ain't I a stinker? All right. That's fascinating.
It's a good movie. It was a good movie.
Yeah,
the new It's. I like the new It's.
The new It's. So what I would say is, I'm glad I've changed my ways. There was a time when I was into dressing as a clown myself. Basically, I just wanted to do comedy. I just was like a comedy boy. And
you thought the best route
clowning?
for that was clowning?
Oh, I considered clown school for about 5 seconds. Yeah, when I was a child.
Did you?
Yeah. I also wanted to be an ice skater thanks to the Aladdin on Ice.
I just spent
Christy Yamaguchi, and
I spent a day or two at the top secret facility that's in charge of like monster trucks, Disney on Ice, and they also now have Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, Greatest Show on Earth Circus there.
Yeah.
So there were literally like the halls were filled with vintage clown cars. Like it was the most insane. Like all the little fire trucks that they would drive around.
If next time you're down in Florida, you should go to the Ringling Museum because they've got beautiful old school displays of stuff, and the Ringling Museum has one of the most beautiful train set things I have ever seen in my life. They have a massive miniature circus, and as a part of that miniature circus, there's a train element as well. The circus train. Famously of Last Crusade, Indiana Jones.
That makes me think. Do you have did you have a Christmas train under the tree ever?
No. And what's weird is we had a dog, but the dog was not allowed in the living room. And so we could have, but Dan, it was an outside dog.
Wait, how do those two things, I'm laughing because how do those two things relate?
Because dogs or cats would knock over a train. Right, and it would disrupt the train life, especially my cats. Now that I think about it, we've discussed it in the past, but we've been like, it's gonna fall over like immediately because these cats are gonna knock it over. Right. No, you see, Dan, we made room for Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior, our sweet baby boy.
Nativity under the tree.
Nativity
under the tree. What, did Santa move it for presents, or did the presents get put around the nativity?
Santa kicked it. It was really weird. Every time we knew Santa because he was upset that Christ had taken his place, and it was strewn across the floor. We knew Santa had been there. No, it was just there. We had a tinier little nativity, and so it fit really nicely right under the tree. And so we put
the tree and the nativity. Okay, gotcha. Yeah. Like the three wise men.
Yeah, they were there too. It wasn't until later that, historically speaking, they should have been somewhere else in the living room, probably, because they weren't necessarily ever there.
I was trying to allude to just bringing gifts to the nativity. Is all I'm saying.
Oh, I see. Just like the wise men. Yes,
because they brought the gifts. Yes. I didn't realize you were going to take such a hard stance on anti-wise men. Are you not?
No, I'm not anti-wise men. I just they weren't at the nativity. Like they never made it. They never made it to the barn. Man,
you're saying
that was like a 2 years later situation where they were
really?
Like, yeah.
I haven't heard this.
Sit down and turn your hymnals to page 102.
Now, I understand that a lot of
everyone came to this Thomas podcast for Christ lore.
People are like commenting on the podcast. Are like, Dan talks about Jesus a lot. What is that? It's like, well, that's Christian drama, guys. I have a wealth of knowledge about Christianity that I could do absolutely nothing with. So it just sits in my head most of the time, and sometimes it comes out.
Once you can't do Bible quizzing anymore, what are you supposed to do with all this information?
I'm very much like up on the idea of halos coming from like the worshiping of the sun, and like a lot of like our timing of like the solstices for our holidays now were kind of relocated. But like, was the wise men being at the nativity? Was that a byproduct of revisionism as Christianity like moved forward, or like?
That's an excellent question. I think it was just a marketing way of putting it all together. Hold on, let me see if I can find it.
You're saying in the Bible they mentioned that the wise men come a little bit later. So they weren't there.
Yeah, in the Bible, the wise men, it's like 2 years later. They like show up like later. And they're like they follow the star, and then they get to it at the end.
Right.
I'm not sure.
The email from God went to their junk folder, and it took them a while to go through their junk folder. Like, we went through it. Oh God emailed us 2 years ago to say he was having a baby. We got to get out there.
We got to go. I don't know if it's mentioned in this, because I think this is more about the iconography of Christmas in general, but it's probably in here, actually. This is an amazing book called Christmas: A Biography by Judith Flanders. I read it last year. I'm going to read it again this year. It's literally the history of Christmas, and why we do what we do. And
which does not have a lot of rooting in actual Christian traditions.
No.
Christianity by and large is a lot of lies that we all believe.
Yeah,
it's wild.
Or just like things that we adjusted over time. I mean, once you translate, Welcome to you're now Deity Dan. That's your new nomenclature. Deity Dan. This is the Deity Dan corner of the podcast.
Oh, I should have. I don't have my lower third in here. I should do it. Chuckle.
Oh yeah, for
Deity.
Chuckle Deity for his.
Well, you know, I really would like to do Disney Church, and maybe that'll happen eventually as a byproduct of fun.
Yeah,
because
it's a good time to have a cult.
Yeah, it's just a religion. This Disney thing that we're currently in the middle of. We just don't realize it yet.
I like that somebody was like, Thomas, fun, and they clicked it. Like poor Peter. He's like, last episode. He's like, you know, some you guys are, you know, you're a little hardcore, and we're like, nah. And then we're like, here's an episode about Thomas, and before it's over, Dan's like, God isn't real.
I didn't say that, sir. I just said that we make up a lot of stuff about him.
That's true. That's true. We do. Speaking of God,
we talked about Thomas a lot. Okay, we talked about Thomas a great deal.
So we had to talk about.
And you asked me about clowns.
Let's talk about let's go back to the Christmas tree. Did you have a train under your Christmas tree?
Oh yeah. I think that is the train connection in my life, quite honestly. It's like, that's when I played with a model train, it was the Christmas tree under the Christmas tree train. It's like where I got trainage. Yeah. And I think a lot of people I got a lot of people had their first trainage, I think, because of Christmas tree trains, if I'm being honest. Like and it's so funny that that now we like have trains, like they're like, it's my favorite thing to do at Disney World. Honest to God, at Magic Kingdom, getting on the train at Disneyland. You go to Disneyland, you walk to New Orleans Square, you get a beignet, you get a mint julep, you get on the train, and you just hang out. You just do at least two laps on the train. It's just the best. And if you're lucky, you get the train with the benches that face in.
Yeah,
you know,
of course.
like I love that one.
I don't like the waiting. I don't like the stopping and waiting. It's my issue. I don't want to wait on others. Give me a whole lap. Like I don't want anybody else to get on.
Well, then you got to get on. You got to rope drop the train, because then there's no one in the park the back. But they got to move all the trains succinctly. You know what I mean? Like the monorail.
I totally understand the reason for it. I just want something different, I think, is my issue.
And my favorite train theme park fact is that the Hogwarts train at Universal Studios is not a train; it's a sideways elevator.
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Did you know that?
Yeah, it's not an anything. It's in the train world. Like,
no, it is. Yeah, like for a train enthusiast going to ride the Hogwarts Express, that you're not riding it, but you're getting pulled. You're getting towed.
Let's talk about other real quick before we get into. I want to talk a little bit about the production of the episode and your field recording journeys. But before that, are there any other famous train things that you love? I'm a big proponent of people getting murdered on trains. I do love an Orient Express.
Yeah. I love that the reboot they did with is it Poirot? Yeah,
Poirot. Poirot. Hercule Poirot.
I like a mystery, and that was a good one. And I also love the Doctor Who episode, Mystery on the Orient Express in Space. Also a fun one. I love a train episode, and the Rick and Morty, the fiction narrative train episode is also incredible. Trains are a really fun device, you know, and I think because, like I said, all the way at the beginning of this episode, they're so relatable. They're so universal. We understand the ins and outs of a train, I think, more than anything else, like when it comes to the Industrial Revolution, quite honestly. No one knows how your car works, but we know how a train works.
Yeah, that's true. Weirdly. I have a good story about train. Was this, I should ask you first before I get into my story. Was your experience in Strasbourg your first official ride a real big boy train?
Oh, no. I'm actually a big fan of a little town here in Pennsylvania that Imagineers would vacation to in the 40s and 50s called Jim Thorpe. And it has a retired train there at Jim Thorpe that is so reminiscent of the Disneyland train experience that it's almost a pilgrimage to kind of go up there, as well as it has what's known as the Packard Mansion, which is very, very, very much a rooted base for the Disney World Florida Haunted Mansion facade. So there's a lot of, like, Jim Thorpe used to be the second most visited place in America after Niagara Falls for like 15, 20 years in America's history, at the peak of like theme park building. So there's no way you're not telling me it was like very much Grand Budapest Hotel. There was a hotel all the way at the top of this old coal train. Cool. The only way to get to was to take the train all the way up there. Very, very cool experience. I love it. It's gorgeous. It's out of control. It's magnificent. And I've done the Polar Express at another train location once. I got the hot chocolate. Santa gave me candy cane. That was great.
That's all you want.
And now I have done Thomas. So
there you go. I have a very unique experience with the train. I filmed my senior thesis in college. We filmed a old 1940s detective noir film that I wrote and produced. And we knew a gentleman who kind of was part of the train community. And he knew what trains were coming in where.
We call them trainees.
Trainees. I don't know if we should call it that. Sounds like they don't know what they're talking about. But he said, if you want an official 1940s looking train, if you go to this station on this day, I know the conductor. We can have the train back up and come back into station 3 or 4 times. And you can have your people dressed in 40s clothes come off the train, because they had like a 2-hour delay between when people were getting off and back on.
Oh,
and
cool.
So I've never felt more powerful than going back up and seeing an entire train just go back up into the distance. It was
They are huge machines.
Big boys, man. They are huge trains.
Yeah. And imagine if one had a face.
Yeah, man. What if it did? Anyway, I want to ask you about Strasbourg. I want to know about a couple things. I want to know the price. I'm curious if people are interested. Like, is it a ride
sub $20 thing?
That's pretty good.
It was super affordable. It might have been $25 for an adult, but it doesn't just include the Thomas ride, but there's also a big play tent with like all the Thomas, with a bunch of tables of all the vintage like pine tracked things, bubble machines, temporary tattoos, all kinds of stuff. It's like a festival kind of. And then they have a couple little minor attractions that you could also do, but this Day Out with Thomas in particular. Other ones go all out in different shapes, and forms.
I'm sure there are Christmas Thomas days and Halloween Thomas days, and
and every year is different now. It's like there's a new theme. This year it was bubble themed. Last year it was like paint splatter themed, where they cover the train and like the passenger cars with like fun decals and stuff like that.
And it must be popular enough, because I saw one of the Fisher-Price toys with that custom paint splatter look.
Yeah, they do limited edition Thomases for each Day Out with Thomas event.
That's crazy. That's amazing.
Like the Hess truck. Yeah, it's really smart and wise. And God bless you. If your kid loves Thomas more than Mickey Mouse, you're saving a ton of cash, man.
Yeah.
Like these things are super affordable. And then on top of all of that, there's at least across the street from where we were, a huge train museum, like a huge train museum with tons and tons of trains that you can walk around and get on and get off. And then even down the street from that was a train hotel where you can essentially rent an entire train unit with like nine bunk beds and like a little like bathroom and living quarters as like your hotel room for the day or the night or whatever, which is pretty neat. It's a fun little area. And with that, any location you're going to go for a Day Out with Thomas, more or less, is going to have some kind of train infrastructure in and around it. So you can make a whole day out of it. You know what I mean? Like,
that's really
it's not, nice. Or at least a whole morning out of it, if you've got like a fussy kid.
Yeah, but all you want is a morning if you have a kid. Like,
right. Super affordable though. Yeah, like $20.
So cool.
Yeah.
Tell me about filming experience. I mean, I assume they're used to people filming and doing stuff, so it's probably not that it's not that weird. But how was it for you guys? Because you and Kenny went up, right? Give us a little behind the scenes of the day.
Kenny and I were there. We got there a little bit early because the Thomas would bring the train in, disconnect the Thomas from the passenger train and move him up and to a photo location so that everyone could get off of the train, filter into a line to get a picture with Thomas. And that's the place I was at the beginning of the episode there, standing with Thomas. And then there was a Percy around the corner, and then there was another thing back. There was another, the Henry or whatever, the square face guy was way back around the corner. And then they take the Thomas from the meet and greet space. They roll him all the way back to the back of the train, hook up his face to the back of the train. He pulls us all the way back. Then he disconnects, moves around, comes to the front of the train. Once we get there, pulls the train all the way forward. So we were filming in and around all of that. And it was great. Honestly, it was great. I mean, a lot of people are there with their cell phones out filming their kids doing everything like that. And there's a lot of, just like at Disney World, there's a lot of event narcissism where it just becomes you live in your own bubble when you're in these events. By and large, I feel like a lot of people do. They're not very aware, but at the same time I walked into it and immediately the owner of the train station son ran up. I mean, grown man who's running the place is like, oh my gosh, I know who you are. He's like, cool. He's like, here's my phone number, here's my card, like I want to tell you. He was just starting spouting off facts, and I took maybe a half a dozen selfies with kids around.
That's awesome.
They all know it was so weird that a bunch of people knew who I was. So people don't, and we're also so used to, you go to Times Square now and there's 15 people on, TikTok live, getting roses, just a polite man who's laughing occasionally holding a camera, hardly the thing to look at anymore. You know what I mean? So
no, not at all.
I vlogged, Kenny vlogged. The vlog Kenny did was already up on his channel. I was going to post my vlog of Day Out with Thomas, except I went to the super secret location these past 2 days. So next week I'm doing a Disney on Ice vlog. But I'm probably on my Patreon. I'll throw up probably for free for everybody to see, because there's free users on my Patreon as well. Every Patreon has free stuff. So I did a vlog. I hung out and, checked out. They had a lot of inflatable Thomases too, which I forgot to mention.
Interesting.
Like big inflatable photo ops of just trains all over the place. Huge inflatable trains. It was cool. I really liked it. But to filming was easy. No one gave us a hard time at all. No one ever really does, honestly.
Let me ask you about the research portion. Did you find the research easy for this one, or was it tricky to hunt everything down? I know sometimes we've talked about Godzilla in the past. It just feels like an intimidating sort of massive thing.
Yes, yeah.
Did Thomas feel like it was one of those instances where you're like, I kind of know where I'm going in, and then you're like, oh, there's so much more than I thought.
What I have to do when I start researching things like this, it was very daunting. It was pretty intimidating, specifically because I showed up to the first place I look when I'm doing any weird character is the fandom Wikipedias that that the fandoms have put together. Forget regular Wikipedia.
They'll know best.
Go to the fandom Wikipedias. And so in there I found I found a list of the Thomas live shows. I found a list of the this and that. But then find out where the first Thomas, the first official Thomas was, and the first unofficial Thomas, and the first American Thomas. You had to start to go into forums. You had to kind of start to read between the lines, because a lot of people will put half the information out there, but because that's all that there is, out of a newspaper article or something like that, and you have to kind of start to deduce. So that went from I got up to 25 different instances of Thomas, and then I cut those down to about 16 because a lot of them were repeats and a lot of them were remounts of the same things. But it's tricky because there's no place I could just go and find a list of every Six Flags Thomas attraction. That wasn't out there available for me. And so instead of, in instances like that where I know there's a bunch and I'm not going to possibly be able to track everything down quick enough, I will do something I know Six Flags, I'm going to focus on the big one, Six Flags America, their big expansion. And hey, you in the comments, tell me what Six Flags you've been to that has Thomas. I want to know. And then also, what has your Thomas attraction turned into? So I'll ask the audience to tell me the stories, and I will just touch on the big cultural touch points of the evolution. I just did Beetlejuice this week, recorded it, and I did the same thing with that.
You said it once, just to be clear.
Yeah. So, because there's so many at a certain point. Once it escalates to a certain size, but a lot of the appearances are just repeats of the same thing over and over and over again, just dispersed across America, and you just live in this little corner and you think so. I know I missed, like, there's a big Japanese theme park that has like a Thomas thing. The Mattel park I didn't talk about, and I also didn't talk about there's like a park in America that still has a Thomas thing running, but all the attractions all look the same. Like, visually, it's not compelling to tell all these stories over and over and over again, right?
Yeah.
I really hit that wall with Beetlejuice. It's like, how many versions of the same Beetlejuice appearing places are you going to want me to talk about before you turn the video off? Because I'm not telling you about. So instead I focus more on like the events, the big milestones, like the big things, the big tours, the big, first appearances here or there. Yeah. Cool. The research was daunting. It's always daunting with things I don't know about,
Yeah, totally. There's no like serious point of reference. So it can be tricky.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, do you have anything else you want to say about the
trains are cool?
Episode? Trains are cool.
And thanks for watching, guys. I really want to say that we've been getting great viewage on the channel, and I really appreciate that. I would love for y'all to go out and leave a review on whatever audio podcast platform that you listen on. Even though you're not listening on it, it would be great just to make us more easily found in searches. So if you could head to Spotify or Apple and leave us a 5-star and like put in a review that says whatever. You could just be a recipe for your chocolate chip cookie. I don't care what the review says, honestly. I really don't. Just hit those 5 stars. But thanks for watching. And, we've been editing the episodes talking about what we do for fun. But what I want to know is, you're listening to this. Yeah. What are you guys doing for fun? What are you guys doing that's super fun that we should know about or be talking about, or just tell the community? I love reading your comments on the podcast. I read every single one of your comments on my main YouTube channel, but here I can really dial in and read a bunch of them and have a good time. So I appreciate everybody leaving comments and watching and sharing. It's great. I can't believe we already had 2 banger episodes back to back, and we're still going.
Yeah, and there's a lot of episodes in the can, so we got some good stuff coming up.
Oh my gosh, we do. We have it's like, when are we going to post like these 7 other episodes we've had? Well, too much cool stuff's going on.
Too much cool stuff's happening, and that's what we'd rather do. Speaking of cool stuff, let's talk a little bit about what we're having fun with. My current thing that I'm having.
Can I just veto whatever you're about to say, and can we just have a conversation about what we both had fun with in the past 7 days, which is Alien Romulus?
I'm going to do both then. Let's do both.
Okay.
Because
Romulus is going to be my fun thing we can talk about. What's your fun thing?
Romulus is tense, and it's going to hold your heart. But if you need to relax, may I recommend Crayola's Epic Book of Awesome coloring book, which you can buy.
My kids have this.
You can buy at the local Target.
The coloring pages in there are unhinged.
They rule. And I truly mean this.
Crazy.
Because
they're crazy.
Sometimes
show the people.
I'm working on it here. So do you want a cat in space trying to get tacos and bacon? Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
Of course you do. So
that's the scene from the first Alien film.
Yeah. I literally.
That's Jonesy.
I literally made Jonesy. I didn't even recognize what I've done. So I've been getting into just
You knew what you were doing.
I guess I did subconsciously. I also
every cat is Jonesy to you.
I did these beautiful giraffe ladies that are schmizing, and
just got done shopping for toys. Those giraffes.
It's a good It's very hard for me to find. I like to color occasionally, and it's hard to find a book that isn't. You kind of go like, I want an adult coloring book or whatever, and what you end up getting is like very like detailed nonsense, or like or it's like, here's a Doctor Who book, but it's all clearly like photos that have been filtered into a coloring page, and you're like, this sucks.
I hate
garbage.
it so much. Yeah.
And this Crayola book of Epic Book of Awesomeness does a really good job of just being like, look, this is big swatches of different shapes, and there's not a lot to think about, and we have thick lines, black lines that take everything in between, so you can have a little bit of messy and you'll be okay. So yeah, color, people, do a little coloring. It can be fun. Now let's talk about
this episode of Fun. God isn't real and coloring tips.
Coloring tips. Coloring tips.
Oh my gosh!
In the episode about Thomas the Train.
About Thomas the Train.
And to stay on topic, let's talk about Alien Romulus.
Yeah, that's what I do. I'm about to go. I want to go see it like tonight. Like again,
I've seen it twice. I'm going to go see it a third time before it leaves.
It is so great. The Andy's ability to be so like defenseless and like bumbling in the beginning of the film, and then he turns into such a serious threat in this in the back half of the movie. You know, like oh my gosh, that transformation is
David Johnson
bananas.
Became an instant like I follow this man wherever he goes actor for me after seeing him in Romulus.
out of nowhere
like even in my wife is pretty good at catching like cool actors and stuff. I'm not saying, but she's not a movie file like me who's literally made it his academic career. And she left and was like, that guy's really good. And I'm like, yeah, like he just like his whole body physically changes depending on how he's playing the part. And I really had a good time. And there were things I didn't like the first time that I went back, and I don't want to ruin it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but there were things that were certain catchphrases were said, and then I recognized because I think I just didn't hear them the first time. They are referenced before a little bit, so we'll talk about it off mic, but you know. Some of the stuff that I was like, it kind of feels cheap, felt a little less cheap, which was nice.
Especially on a rewatch, especially like rewatching it. If it feels more authentic on a rewatch, great. That's preferred, honestly.
And also some of the CGI elements, which the movie is very much a physical effects movie, which I very much appreciate. But a certain CGI element that I won't talk about because it's a spoiler, is it looks better than I remembered after the first watch. Once my brain got over the fact that the thing was there in CGI and whatever, we're talking about a certain person, character.
Which, by the way, I saw coming the minute I didn't see that guy's face. Yeah. I was like, oh, I know what's happening. I got tingles. I was excited. It's not that me seeing it coming didn't devalue it, like the joy of it, but like I was like, oh, this is neat.
What I would say is they expertly handle it for the first like 25%, and then they go into close-ups, and you're like, I don't know, man. I still can't be convinced that you couldn't have went full animatronic and sort of like gave him some battle scars to like help.
Like they did with Bishop.
Yeah, and we wouldn't have bought it because Bishop worked great. And
I love specifically with Bishop and like the narrative, like the lore of the stories, the idea of a android that's been decommissioned appearing very animatronic and very fake and like significantly uncanny. Like once it's been broken, like fine. I like the illusion. I think it actually kind of plays even more so into the storytelling of these things being mechanical. But you know, we live in this world now where this is just what we do, and so whatever.
From what I've heard, it was a Ridley Scott choice, and I love Ridley Scott, but I also think the man is old, and he's been making some choices, even in his own Alien movies, where I'm like, really? Like, why? So, you know, I'm sort of nitpicking because it's someone said, and I think they were trying to be negative on Twitter. They were like, if they were like the first Alien's like a slasher movie, and the second one is like an action adventure, and they were going down the list, and they're like, and this one's just a dark theme park ride, and I was like, yeah, it is. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, seriously.
What would be the problem? Were you spooked? Did you get spooked?
Yeah, there was like, I mean, like there's that particular M. Night Shyamalan Signs moment where, you know, like you see the silhouette of the thing, and it like made my butthole real tight. I'm going to be honest with you.
My theater, the second time around, my theater was very eclectic and much more vocal, and that happened, and I just heard someone.
I love that, man.
Someone just went, "Nope."
I love that, man. I love that. Like I said, if I could go back in time, I would go back to the opening night of Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2 just to be in the theater when Carlisle's head gets ripped off, because the authentic reactions of an audience member of an audience at a movie theater that's bought in, that's so bought in at that point, man, when I saw it in the thing, I could talk about this, not a spoiler because it's in the trailers, but the scene where we're dodging low gravity acid blood was a very unique and interesting new thing brought to the franchise. That
the whole elevator sequence is that's in the third act is so good.
Yeah, it is.
They very clearly set up the stakes and why things are happening. Like at the once they enter the area, which I thought was great too, because I never felt like they didn't explain why things were happening. And I love the idea. And again, this is sort of in the trailer. It's not a big deal. A shock about all shocks. The space station is going to crash, right? So, but it's not going to just like crash into to a planet.
It's going to get sandpapered away.
It's going to get grinded down by a a field
asteroid belt. Yeah,
asteroids.
field. Yeah.
And
a planetary ring system.
And so there was enough stuff like that I was
some really nice stuff. And also, as much as this franchise frustrates me in the in its bold-faced stupidity of canonical choices of the company, the fact that the entire facility was synthetic only, I thought was very fascinating to me as a canonical choice to, kind of like
which facility? Because not the full facility.
The half, because it's split in half, right? The half.
Oh, I don't know. I don't know if the
as they were docking into the half that was working with the face huggers, you can see on the dock right above it, there's a huge yellow painted thing that says synthetics only, and there was signage that said like synthetics only, which is why it's interesting in that face hugger sequence when Andy's like resetting, they don't bother him. They don't, you know what I mean? And we get that.
Yeah.
And we get that cut. Yeah. There's a cut scene from Alien 2 where Bishop is crawling through the tubes to get to the relay, and an alien comes upon him and it's like, oh, I can't reproduce with you. And just pieces. Just leaves him alone. It's like it's like a piece of machinery. Like I thought that lore building was fascinating to me. I was almost a little disappointed that the other side of the facility didn't open up and was fully thriving like a fallout shelter full of scientists actively studying.
I mean, I don't want to ruin it, but like there's a very Aliens-esque concept of a harvest.
Yes, of course. But I was kind of like, I was really hoping for that, like, this tech, like that it was all like Truman showed on one side. Like we set this whole thing up, like this was all a plant to bring you up here because we just needed this or that. And when they were like the station split, I was very interested in that. But then the device, they weren't. But it was such an interesting device to immediately bring out, and then. Yeah. What was the point? I guess one side was supposed to be researching in the synthetics, and one side was supposed to be like humans.
Research and development. I think that was sort of the concept.
And one side was like the goo, which is like alien goo, alien goose. The goo.
I just think of the Muppets video game when I hear people say goo. I don't know if you've ever heard. Did you ever play the old Monster Muppets video game? Watch out for the goo, which is what Pepe says.
Yeah, man. Frankenstein Kermit.
Yeah, watch out for the goo.
Can't beat it.
I would recommend it to anyone who hasn't seen it yet. It's great.
I had so much fun watching it. I had so much fun.
Hey, Disney, you've now learned your lesson, because you took a really good Predator movie and you just threw it on Hulu and it was incredible and it should have been in theaters, and you made no money off of that. And this movie is now made over 100 million.
Prey?
Yeah, which was incredible.
And I guess the two directors are talking about doing an AVP movie together, which...
No, they're not. They're not going to do that.
What's his name? What's his name said he wants to team up with them.
Alvarez?
Yeah, he said... Yeah, he says he's buddies with Dan, and he called and he's like, I'm going to call Dan. I want to work with him.
If they want to make it really good, fine, do it.
But he said he wants. What's the movie that's designed? What's the movie that was shot with like two sunset, dawn, dusk, where like two directors shot? One shot the first half, the other one shot the second half.
Oh, okay.
And
so he's talking about. I thought you were talking about the Ethan Hawke movie Before Dawn.
No. There's a movie directed by two guys. Google will tell me.
Movie directed by two guys. That'll get you far on that Google search. We're gonna. By the way, everyone, Dan and I already decided we're gonna have an Alien episode at some point. We're gonna deep dive and have good discussions because there's a lot of love for the Alien, and And
it's selling me Finding Nemo. That's not what I
Nope,
was looking for.
That's
so
not it. Those are two fish.
I've rewatched all the Alien flicks in preparation, and I really I love them. They're my Fast and the Furious. You know what I mean? Like just nonsense.
Did you watch the director's cut of the third, or did you watch the theatrical cut of the third?
In my most recent rewatch, I watched the theatrical cut because I hadn't seen the theatrical cut in a minute. I'm actually I'm pro director's cut. I'm pro cow xenomorph versus dog xenomorph.
For real.
Or is it a cow or mule or something? It's
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's some large animal.
I kind of love that movie. Like it's its own thing, and it's a weird dark vibe, and I'm not sure it works fully. Truly, but at the same time, man, it's a weird movie. You can't give it.
Sure is.
Can't give it. Can't say it's not that. Unless we talk about the fourth one, the better.
I don't mind the fourth one. The fourth one had one of the best teams. I love that pirate gang. The pirate gang's fun, and again, you have to remember that it's set like 400 years or so after, and so they're all the humans are stupid again, and like they're using real humans to research these things. Yeah, I don't think it's Neil. I'm glad Neil Blomkamp or whatever his name is didn't like retcon the fourth movie. Because I wish we could get a movie. Like, I love Alien Ripley. I love like mutated Ripley. I think it's cool. I love like I love like Superman Ripley, like superhero, like
See, I think it takes away all the fun. I think it takes away all that good. No,
it's female empowerment, man. It's female empowerment. Ripley has survived enough. She's the ultimate being now.
You're saying. I see what you're saying. The trauma needs to be over for Ripley. I don't disagree.
Right.
We will.
And it could just begin for Cal, the robot.
Yeah. We're gonna give it for what's her name, Rain and Andy now get to have all the trauma for a while.
And let me tell you something. If I watch one more Alien movie that ends with people being unceremoniously stuck in freezer tubes for me to just guess as to what happens, for me to just assume, I guess there must be a face hugger on that escape pod crawling around somewhere that I'm just so tired of the way that these movies end. That's my only complaint.
That's your only complaint. We'll get another one, I think, at this point. I think it's pretty clear.
For sure.
And we have a television series coming out very soon.
Right. Who knows what that's going to be about?
Alien Earth. I have very high expectations. I hear it's very much more about the machinations of Weyland-Yutani, which I love, because if it's anything like my favorite thing about Andor, which is I just like evil people bitching in a boardroom. That's my favorite thing.
Yeah, it sounds very Andor what they're doing. I would actually be surprised if there's even a xenomorph in the show in any way, shape, or form. I doubt there will be.
Season finale or something probably, but
I don't even know a season finale, man, because xenomorphs on Earth has a very specific we're over. It's over. If a xenomorph gets to Earth, it's over. It's over.
It's over.
I mean, they have comics about it and whatnot. It's legitimately over.
Yeah. But it's Noah Hawley who did Fargo, which is incredible. And the Legion X-Men show.
Oh my God, that show's so great. Oh, that show's great too. Okay, well, I'm hyped.
My man can do no wrong. So anyway, with that, I think we'll call it on this episode that's about Thomas the Train, God, and aliens.
And coloring. Don't forget coloring.
And coloring, of course. Dan, wrap us up. Where should people find all of Deity Dan if they want more?
If you're listening to this podcast, you already know.
Yeah, if you're still here too.
Yeah, if you're this deep in, plugging what? Plug what? We don't have a guest. We don't need to plug anything. They're here. Go listen. I told you what to do.
Go to the holy
comments,
social media.
Subscribe. You're already subscribing, guys, and you're watching. The channel's about to get monetized, which is big for us. So we appreciate that, which means bigger and better things. Most notably, additional equipment, so Dan doesn't have to constantly be moving his entire board
studios
to different parts of my home every time I want to record.
Can expand.
No, I'm pretty hyped, guys. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. It's been fun.
This has been a production of 710 Media.